is the face of the enemy. He is vicious. He is ruthless. He will stop at nothing.
3 days later.
By Grabthar's hammer, by the sons of Warvan, you shall be avenged.
Hey everyone, this has been Dunn. Over the weekend, I heard about a story that's been going viral recently on the internet concerning a little squirrel named Peanut and his friend Fred the Raccoon. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think you can find most of the information you need to, if you just do a quick Google search. But I have to weigh in on this because I do love animals. I have 3 cats of my own. And I do furry comics, and I love doing furry comics because there's something about, furry animals that just appeal to me. And it seems to be something that we as human beings seem to gravitate toward. I'm not saying that for everyone, but I'm saying for a vast majority of people, we like furry animals, especially if they're cute. So the essential facts are, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because you can probably read it all over the place on the internet. There's lots of information about what's going on, but essentially it comes down to this. A guy named Mark Longo, who recently moved to New York and has sort of a sanctuary for abused, neglected, abandoned animals, and he takes care of them out in the countryside. And I assume that somebody must have complained to New York authorities, specifically the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, which is kind of ironic because it doesn't seem like they're really conserving the environment by what they just did, and they got a warrant in which, from my understanding, almost a dozen agents, armed agents, raided the house out in the countryside and apprehended the squirrel and Fred the raccoon. Leaving the owners of the house outside with very little to go on for hours on end, and then taking away their pets, and later finding out that they've been euthanized because the claim is that the squirrel bit one of the handlers. Now, I don't know much about handling wild animals. I don't have that experience, but my understanding is that, people who are in animal control, they know what they're doing supposedly by knowing that an animal can bite them. So most likely they either wear gloves or use some sort of device to capture them at a distance or what have you. But it seems kind of fishy to me that a squirrel would bite a human, being that, unless they're being abused or manhandled or threatened, squirrels really don't attack people. So that story doesn't really add up, in my opinion. But this is something I think is blowing way out, into the internet sphere. That's in a way that it really shouldn't. I mean, if you think about it, someone apprehending a quote unquote wild animal, wouldn't really make the news headline. But it's the fact that the owner in social media, in news outlets have picked up on this story because this is symbolic of something much more than just simply animal control taking out a quote unquote illegal pet. Now, I looked up, what the New York State law about owning, animals in New York City. Now, I think the original intent of the law was to prevent people owning wild animals or quote unquote wild animals in the city, where there's a lot of people, in which animals if they're not controlled properly, can get loose and be a threat to the general population. But this is not the case. This is where this farm out in the middle of practically nowhere was helping, abused and neglected and abandoned animals. And, they were apparently in the process of getting certified so that they can do this. The intent of the law was to protect people from being attacked by, individuals who owned wild animals. According to the law, or according to what I've read, wild animals to them was all members of the Felidae family, which is basically cats, except domestic cats. All members of Canidae family, which are basically dogs, except domestic dogs. All bears, all non-human primates, all venomous reptiles, crocodiles. Some other animals include cheetahs, Gorphus tortoises, certain marine turtles, kangaroos, rhinoceroses, and any endangered species. Now, I'm sure the law was intended to be something positive and to protect the human population. But this may be a case of a law that's been stretched beyond belief. It was obvious to anyone that Peanut the squirrel was no threat to human beings. Apparently the owner, Mark Largo, had rescued Peanut when it was a baby, when its mother was killed, by a human. And he apparently raised it, and it became domesticated. So does it really qualify as a wild animal anymore? The fact that also that they sent so many armed agents into his house to apprehend a squirrel. I mean, we're not talking about a lion or a cheetah, or a large animal like a bear or, something like that. We're talking about a squirrel. A small, inoffensive, helpless squirrel. A squirrel that, to my knowledge, has never, ever, gave humans rabies, at least as far as I know. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I'm more than willing to admit when I'm wrong. And a raccoon. Now, raccoons, are carriers of rabies. That's true. But again, it would have been quite obvious to any, any animal controls person with any type of experience would know if a raccoon was rabid. And certainly, if the owners knew the raccoon was rabid, they certainly would have taken care of that for fear of being bitten as well and contracting rabies. Now, they used the excuse of rabies as to put down Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon. Now, this is the reason why I think it's resonating with a lot of people, is that this is something that is symbolic. And we as humans, we love symbols. We love things that point us into some sort of direction, by using it as a way to, justify things that we believe in. Making Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon martyrs, showing that this was an intentional overreach by the government. And I believe this was true. It was, if they really had no ill intentions, they simply could have just gave him a letter saying, hey, we are concerned that you have animals that may be illegal, and we would like to work with you because we're the government. We'd like to help people. Ha! Yeah, right. That's never going to happen. Government is not there for your happiness. They exist because we allow them to exist. No matter how, no matter what the circumstances of government only exists because of people. And when people allow government to exist and get away with things, then the government will push further and further into our lives. Simple as that. Our founding fathers knew this. They knew that government had a propensity to become tyrannical, become overbearing, and this is something that needs to, this is something that I think is endemic of what has happened here. if you, as a government, is not willing to protect the unborn human beings, then what is a squirrel and a raccoon? It doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless to them. They don't care. No matter how important they are to an individual, they will use any excuse to get what they want because they're the government. They have the power of the gun. They have the power of imprisonment. They have the justice system behind them. What do we as people, as citizens can do is limited because we don't have those kind of vast resources. The only way we can fight is we as a collective decide that we are not going to take this anymore. We are not going to allow this to happen. So we contact people that are in power and convince them that they need to change this. They need to, and if that peaceful means are not used, then there's other recourses that people can take that may not be as peaceful, as governments would like. Now, in which case things can get easily spiraled out of control. I don't like to be political, but I am, and I'm not sure whether this is becoming political. I know, because it also the definition is that what is a wild animal? It was obvious to anybody that Peanut the squirrel was domesticated. It was friendly. It gave joy to millions of people, kids. You gave them positive attitudes to wildlife, that respect wildlife, that they too, are part of our world. And it was, what does it mean by wild? It was obvious to anyone that Peanut the squirrel was not a wild animal anymore. It was domesticated. And I think what the law was intended is that people going out there snatching wildlife. I mean, if you were to get a feral cat, or a wild dog, does that mean that they need to be put down immediately? I mean, probably in most cases that's what the government do because they can't afford to keep them. But I've seen people who have taken in feral cats and wild dogs, and eventually, with care and love, they've become domesticated. I mean, it should have been a case of, one individual going to the park and saying, "Hey, we want to help you keep your pets, and we're willing to do this if you do this, compromise, work things out. The government is supposed to be there to help us, to protect us, but it seems to me there's certain governments out there whose only role in life is to destroy those who do not agree with them, who want to prevent them from retaining power. The whole idea behind the way our system of government would work is that eventually people would not be that way, that they would serve and then they would leave, and they would let another group of people come in and get their chance at it. It seems like a lot of the government wants to do is to retain as much power as they can to control the lives of us. And I just really feel like this is a small example of how a government run amok can destroy people's lives. I mean, this guy did not have, any record of having any of his animals attack any human being. And the fact that he was out in the middle of nowhere where there was very little chance of coming in contact with any other human, his animals coming in contact with any other humans, was very low. It seems like this was overkill, in my opinion. So anyway, I don't want to make this too long, a rant, but I do feel for the owners of Peanut and Fred the Raccoon. And I don't know what the long-term implications will be, but this is definitely going to be a rallying cry for many people, because if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. So anyway, this has been done, giving you my thoughts. And until next time, be well, be safe, and try to bring joy to somebody else. Until next time, see you later.